mandate of the Ecowas court, initially it was an interstate court that was dealing with matters between the states themselves. Then in 2005, they gave the court a human rights mandate to the effect that the court had jurisdiction to deal with matters, complaints from citizens or in all the member states whose human rights in various aspects were violated by the member states, the state actors, the police, security, anybody at all. So that is what has made the court what it is now.
So how do you say has been the role of the court in promoting human rights within the West African sub-region since its creation?
As I said, from 2005, the role of the court has been very, very important. For instance, freedom of speech and freedom of speech particularly, talking about Gambia, especially when Jammeh was the president. There's so many violations of human rights, and the court had the occasion to pronounce on them and declare them illegal and made pronouncement to the effect that some of the laws that were being applied even within the country were violations of international laws that the government of Gambia itself had signed onto. When a state signs onto international laws, you have to prove your standards up to that level. So if you sign treaties on international best practices, freedom of expression, safety of journalists, and then you arrest journalists and imprison them and kill them, that's against the laws, and therefore the court pronounced on them. There are so many of them in Nigeria. There was censorship some time ago before the election, into one of the elections. They wanted all journalists, all press houses to bring all their publications for them to censor before they aired them, and they came to the court. The court said no, that's against the rules of international law, and therefore the court said no, we cannot do that. So there have been so many things. Individuals have had their rights, some killed, some maimed, some imprisoned. They come to the court declares, and in some cases the states comply. They release the people involved, sometimes they pay compensation to the people. So it has truly affected their lives in a very important and positive way.
Okay, before my colleague comes in, because you talked about the court makes declaration, the court makes pronouncements. The effect will have been that if the court makes pronouncements, there should be some level of compliance. How would you rate the level of compliance by member states, especially with respect to the pronouncements of the court?
Yes, that is a sad commentary. Just like all other international courts, the court has no means of enforcing its own judgment, unlike the national courts who have that authority. And so it is by self-will that court judgment of the courts are complied with. Unfortunately, in our parts of the world, because most of the states do not care about judgments of courts, we are rating it around 30% or less, and it's so sad, the sad commentary on the court. In other places, they use compliance with the court judgment as compliance with the international standards, and therefore each of them hurriedly comply with the judgments of the court. That is why in the European court and other places there's a very high compliance rate. In Ecowas as well, compliance of judgments of the court with judgment of the court should be one of your international obligations, which should let you have international positions in the UN and other places. Unfortunately, they do not use that. That should be one of the benchmarks. If you have a high compliance rate, then you can be getting positions in the UN and other places for your country. But unfortunately, in ours, it's not like that. So sad.
Well, the Ecowas sub-region is quite wide, 15 member states, and not too many people will understand or appreciate the work that you've done. So I would like for you to maybe state a few of these cases that you've worked on and that the Ecowas Court of Justice is satisfied with.
Thank you very much. One that comes to mind recently, the case of Molu versus Sierra Leone. There was a student rioting. It was not even riot, it was a demonstration by students because they had been made to stay home for over a year and the university was going to be closed. So they did a peaceful march in the city, and the police accosted them and shot live bullets against them. One of them, Molu, had a gun pellet in his body, and the Sierra Leonean doctors couldn't remove it. He went to Kolebu in Accra, Ghana, a bigger hospital. They looked at it and said no, where the pellet was, they could not, if they removed it, it will have devastating effect on his health, and therefore he had to live with it. He came to the court and we awarded $20,000 compensation for him against the country. Up until now, it hasn't been paid. that is one of them. And then in the same Sierra Leone, young girls who got pregnant, school girls, were prevented from going to the mainstream schools. They set up a school for them where they were teaching them only math, English. And of course, you're talking about the level where they were studying 8 subjects for an external examination to go ahead to the university. And so the WAVES is a women organization that came to court. And when they came, we said, no, the Minister of Education has no power to do that. There should be equality among the people. So we applied the Maputo Protocol and said that, no, this is a violation of their rights as girls. And therefore, later they admitted all of them into the mainstream education and gave them the full education that they deserved. That's one of them. We go to Togo, Amnesty International versus Togo. Before the last election in Togo, there was a disturbance. The government wanted to change their constitution as usual, and therefore there was a disturbance in the city. Knowing that social media is what is used to propagate all the information around, they closed the internet for a couple of weeks. And therefore, Amnesty International and individuals who have been affected, their businesses have been affected, came to the Ecowas court, and we declared that though right to the internet is not a human right itself, but it's a means by which you can achieve freedom of expression, safety of journalists, and everything. And therefore, we declared that that was a violation of their rights, because without the internet, you cannot propagate information, you cannot receive or disseminate information. This is also another case which I think is very important in the system. Then in Nigeria, there's the censorship case I was talking about. The government wanted to look at every publication, but especially the private media. So before they go and disgrace, they call it disgrace the government in the eyes of the voters. And that was not done because the lawyers came to court quickly and said that could not be done. So the court also whittled it down, that decision. These are a few ones that come to mind.
Now, talking about right violations, it's only important that we state clearly that once one has his life taken, I mean, that would be the highest of it. Now, we have the Gambia, for instance, we have Liberia, even Sierra Leone, but particularly, let me be very precise with Liberia, where there is this call for the creation of an economic and war crimes court, which recently was approved by the president. I'm really asking, how much is the Ecowas Court of Justice involved in the conflict? Because for most of the millions of them, all they want is justice, and that's what you represent. How involved are you in these processes, Gambia, Liberia?
Very well. For Liberia, we have not been contacted in any way. But for Gambia, we know that it's been set up by the Ecowas Commission, by the country with the support of the Ecowas Commission, because it has to have an international character. Otherwise, if it's done within and by the country alone, to be seen to be witch hunting of the government against its opponents, previous opponents, and therefore the Ecowas Commission is part of it, and they are still doing their legislation. And I'm aware that staff from this court, lawyers from this court, are supporting them to do their legislation. And when it is done, the judges who are going to sit there are not Gambian judges. There could be one or two, but they are going to appoint them from within the sub-region, from the various countries who are experienced in criminal justice, so that they go and do the trials, so to give it the international fair practice that we all desire. But for Liberia, we have not been contacted, and I don't know anything about it.
If I may ask, this is where you will have citizens complain about delayed justice. And I think this will give you the platform to maybe explain further some of the challenges that the court faces. But for some people, for instance, in the Gambia, would assume that this has taken too long. And why would that be, or why has that been?
Okay, thank you very much. The Gambian issue, I think the government, the new government that came initially, was proactive in trying to find justice for all. That's why they set up the TRLC, the Reconciliation Committee. They did well. They published their findings, except that the white paper issuance took a very long time. I don't know, because government knew they were going to pay money, obviously. So they needed, before they accepted, they needed to make sure they had the money or wherewithal to be able to deal with the outcomes of it. And that's one of the causes of the delays. And then secondly, well, though, as you said, it's justice denied, but I think in a way, the circumstances, they are doing their best, because it's a little country and money is very difficult to come by, and compensations are also paid with money, So I think once they've been able to put in place all these things, it's quite a bit commendable. I think if all the governments are able to do this in a way, it will also help us. But talking about the Ecowas Court itself, The delays are mainly caused by the language factor. You know, we deal in 3 languages, Portuguese, French, and English. And before processes are concluded, we need to translate them into the 3 languages. And unfortunately, citing financial situations, we try several times to have our language department augmented by getting so many translators in-house. That is not forthcoming. So we have, as at now, we have only 6. That's 2 for each language. And looking at the volume of work in this court, so if they file a document which is very voluminous, it takes months and ends for them to be able to translate it into the other languages before it comes before the judge for them to. That one alone may take about 6 months or sometimes 1 year. So these are not the costs. So the financial aspect, getting people recruited and getting approval from the powers that be is a major problem for the court.
How do you handle situations or report of unfair rulings by apex courts in countries of West Africa? Senegal is one country if you want to talk about it, you know, the case
against the opposition, and we understand at the time they had summoned or petitioned the Ecowas Court of Justice to intervene, and you had one time ruled that a ban that prohibits demonstrators from protesting be lifted, but that is yet to be respected. These are one among other cases. How do you handle that?
Thank you very much. You see, we respect the decisions of apex courts in the various countries because the court does not pretend, and it is not an appellate court over the national courts. They are the highest courts within their countries. ECOWAS court will only intervene where the issue has to do with violation of rights. For instance, as you said, the court there, well, I don't think it's the court. Maybe the court affirmed it, but what I know is that the president and his people decided that for the central business district, only he and his people could do their own work there in the name of governance. Meanwhile, he'll be doing the campaign, while the others were taken out at the outskirts of the city, which was unfair. I mean, there's clear discrimination, and therefore the court had to rule that no way, you cannot do that. You cannot set perimeters for other people not to go in, and then you'll be going to do your campaigns. But generally, unless the judgment of the apex court is palpably wrong and violates people's rights, the ECOWAS court will be very skeptical in trying to change it. Otherwise, it will always create a clash between the ECOWAS court and the member states.
So is this a kind of a fear of undue interference by member countries? Because from what you're saying, you wouldn't want to interfere in a national court's decision, except if, of course, it borders on violation of rights, and this is also subject to interpretation. So does this also add to some of the challenges that you confront? Because member countries are still responsible for, of course, keeping the court running, and in most cases, the court is always against the government, and the government, as we know, is whosoever is the president at that time. Is this another level of challenge for the court?
Well, I wouldn't say completely so, because the court, each one has its own jurisdiction, and then so if they rule on a substantive matter, for instance, ownership of land, and they take evidence and declare that this is the owner of the land, and the one who doesn't understand or accept the judgment comes to us, we will not deal with it because they've gone through the same trial which we would otherwise have gone through. But when it's a violation, for instance, you go to court, even the Supreme Court of your country, and you want to call witnesses, and the court says, the judge says, no, we will not allow you to call witness to come and prove your case. That's a violation of your right to fair hearing. That one, this court will deal with it, despite that it's a decision by the Supreme Court, because it's a clear violation of your right to fair hearing, which is an international human right which they are violating. But if they give you all the chance, you call your witnesses, you do everything, the other side call their witnesses, and you go through the normal trial, and judgment is given against you. When you are coming before us, it's an appeal, and we do not accept appeals from member states. That is the dichotomy, the difference. So it's not as if there is a difficulty on the court's part not to interfere, but their jurisdiction is different from our jurisdiction. Yes.
Okay, so finally from me, because I will always go back to the issue of obeying pronouncements by the court. Is the court doing anything, especially through the commission, to ensure that some measures are taken to ensure compliance with the court's pronouncement by member countries?
Thank you very much. You know, courts, we call in law, we say functus officio. You have no more thing to done when you deliver your judgment. It's not up to you to go and ensure the enforcement of the judgment. In the member states, as I said, they have the mechanisms by which they enforce their judgment. Unfortunately for us, the member states have not ratified and even domesticated the Ecowas Court rules on regulations and protocols. If they were to domesticate them in their normal national laws, that would mean that anybody who gets a judgment against any of the member states can easily go and apply those laws to enforce the judgment. For instance, if a land has been declared to be yours, or damages like the $20,000 for Molu, you can just go through their system and even file a government car, because the car belongs to the government, judgment is against the government. You file the car and have it sold and take your money. But however, ours is not like that. Ours, the country, as I said, is by self-will, or the president of the Ecowas Commission has a duty under the protocols to help enforce the judgment of the court by bringing it to the attention of the member states and then even suing the member states before the same court. It's a bit funny. And then if he brings, at that level, if he brings a state against the court, he will notify the authority of heads of state and all that this country is not complying with his judgment. So our duty here is to normally send the judgment that we have delivered to the Ecowas Commission, the president especially, and these are judgments that have been delivered, and these are the ones that have not been complied with. As we speak now, because there's a meeting, we are compiling one which we are taking to the Ecowas Commission president, and these are, so if he so desires and as law dictates, he should be able to notify all of them as they are coming for the meeting that country A, B, C, these are judgments you have not complied with, and then ideally they should be able to comply with them. If they don't, then he has to take them to court.
I think there is no better person to explain to West Africans the question I'm going to ask you next. So for many people, the Ecowas Court of Justice exists to defend vulnerable people, all West Africans, but it appears as if the Ecowas Court of Justice appears, but it's invincible. It's as if it exists to serve state institutions and maybe powerful people, not the ordinary population. Supposing someone wants to get to the Ecowas Court of Justice to be heard, how can they do that?
Yeah, the Ecowas Court is there to serve not the rich, not the state institutions, but rather the indigent people. And it's so clear. All the people who come before the court are indigent people whose property have been destroyed. There's a couple of them. For instance, in Niger, Turkey came there. They wanted to give Turkey land to build a mosque, to build a school. They broke down somebody's school who was on about 20-acre land and gave it to him without compensation, anything. He came to court. There are individuals whose lives have been destroyed, their property, money seized. For instance, in Togo, when you're passing through there, a business person traveling, and he's carrying about 20, 30, 40,000 euro, it is seized by the security agents in the country. You know, these are people who are indigent and who are community citizens going about their normal duties, who are being harassed and molested within the community, and those are the people who come to court. As for the state institutions, they are normally on the receiving side because they do the bad things. Aside that, you see that NGOs normally come to the court and they represent the indigent people. There are so many NGOs who file cases on behalf of people. For example, the Waves, the Sierra Leone case I spoke about, it was an NGO that brought the case on behalf of the young pregnant schoolgirls.
So is it easier when they come through NGOs, like have an intermediary or a licensed person, or supposing they just want to come straight to ECOWAS? Do you have regional offices where an ordinary West African, be the person a Nigerian, a Senegalese or Ghanaian, can just walk into and lodge that complaint?
Yeah, thank you very much. It all boils down to having a lawyer, but the NGOs have lawyers who represent them, and therefore mostly it is good when they come through them. However, individuals engage lawyers and they also come directly. And previously, before COVID, the court, everything was done in Abuja. You have to bring your documents to Abuja, the court here, to file them. Then you even direct where the respondent is. They're going to serve them. But mostly because they all have embassies here, you serve them through their embassy, the ambassadors here, and all that. Then you have to come to ECOWAS here with your lawyer to come and argue your matter. That was quite way expensive for the indigent we are talking about. Like whether good or bad, COVID has come to create a better situation for indigent citizens. During the COVID, and immediately after, we set up a new law where we started hearing the cases in a hybrid form. So parties they only have to scan the documents and email them to our registry. When it is received, we also email it to the state whom you have sued, and then they respond, and then as the date is set, we do the Zoom hearing. And that was what has remained up until now. Now we have even improved upon it. Just the last 3 weeks, we've been going around the member states to educate lawyers and government agents and people about a new system we've called the ECMS, Electronic Case Management System, which is purely paperless. And then that one, you just email, upload your documents and email it to the court registry. As soon as it is received, it's also emailed automatically to the person you are suing. They also email their responses back, and then hearing is done paperless without anything up until judgment is delivered, without anybody traveling to Abuja or incurring any cost. And before the court, nobody pays any cost, no filing fee, nothing by all the parties before the court.
Well, still, just before we round up, how gender friendly is the Ecowas Court of Justice? I mean, just like you said, and let me just go back to COVID. Post-COVID, we've seen reports here and there about gender-based violence, how the data has skyrocketed from where it was pre-COVID and now post-COVID. Do you attend to these issues?
Well, the court cases, people who bring cases to the court. So for us, they've been just, but not even post-COVID. For me, I remember just about 3 cases involving girls or women. Yeah, but otherwise, the court is there. Once they bring the cases, we deal with it. There was one in Nigeria where ladies were arrested on the street by the police, saying that they were night workers. What do you call it? Social workers or whatever. Arrested them and brought them to the court. The court said that, but there were men around at the time. So why do you arrest only the women and say they were loitering around, they were looking for customers and all? The men may also have been looking for them. The court lambasted them and left them and even awarded damage against the police of the state of Nigeria. Then there was this very sad case, a soldier, aircraft woman, we call the aircraft woman case. Young lady, young pilot, and the superiors went and destroyed her. They had serious sex with her, and it was sad when the case was heard. So she came to court and we awarded, I don't remember, but pretty huge compensation for her against the military. Because they were all officers, they were shielding each other. So she couldn't even pinpoint who specifically did it and all that. But then the evidence was clear, the medical report was so clear, so we awarded compensation for her. And so when you bring, then the waves one, as I spoke about. So there are not many of them, but then the very first one is the Mani Karo against Niger, that's slavery case where Niger, the lady was given into slavery, and then when later the family they came, they said no, in this day and age you cannot give someone out as a slave in return for money or for services or any other thing. The court dealt. That's one of the very early cases that this court dealt with. So basically, otherwise the rest are all community. They go and destroy communities either through religious fundamentalism and other stuff.
Talk about community impact. I have produced an environment program. I think this is crucial that I ask. We've also heard of reports. In fact, we've interviewed residents, villagers who complain of how a big multinational not invade, but that would be the right word, to explore materials and thereby contaminate or pollute the environment. They cannot longer farm, they cannot longer fish, and they're left to just survive on their own, and they've tried that severally and no response or mediation has come. So we're asking, how many of these have you received and how much of them have you worked on? The Ogoni land crisis in Niger Delta region is one. Senegal, I know that the fishermen have also got complaints. I think I can remember the case of Liberia, Asilo Metal. There is, I think it's a US-based company where the company has promised to build roads, to improve their livelihoods, but none of this has been met. Have you done a lot of work on this?
Yeah, I think there are 2 major ones in this court. We've not finished the work. There are 2 major ones. It takes a lot of research because of the nature of these cases. Because parties have to prove that, for instance, your roof is destroyed, your livelihood, your tree crops are destroyed, there's no good oxygen, so many things. So I think it takes a lot of research and the parties are still working on them. There's a big one, I think the Cross River or
Yo,
those
Bonny.
areas. Yes, yes. So some are here would not be dealt with, but there's one which I remember from La Côte d'Ivoire. The same thing. They gave the mining rights to some multinational company that came to destroy their. It became magma, like mad. All the water became very thick. All fishes died. Their farms, everything, and we dealt with it and awarded huge compensation. It all comes to the enforcement. Exactly.
Has any come from Galamsey, Ghana?
Not yet, but this other one, Transparency International rather brought the government regarding some rights that they were going to give, this gold issue.
The forest.
Yes, so those ones were but sometimes the constitution empowers the state to do certain things. It's a bit with their statutory duties. The state is in charge of land, they have the right. If they go through the normal process and do the compensation, there's little the court can do to stop them from performing their constitutional duties.
I don't know if my colleague has anything to ask. I'll finish up the interview. We had a case of Togo. You don't want to speak about politics, but this is not about politics. I guess it's about doing something that's quite unconstitutional. We heard from the opposition camp more than 13 parties cry out and call on the Ecowas Court of Justice to intervene to prevent that change of constitution. So they feel as if their rights completely have been violated. So how much should people know about the Ecowas Court of Justice in terms of what you do so that you are not misrepresented or your image tainted in a way? Because it's as if you are not doing much in that area.
Thank you very much. We all have heard it, but I don't know whether they filed a case. When a case is filed, it takes time before it gets to the judges. It goes to the registry. They work on it. They exchange documentation, both the state and the people who have sued, whether it's an NGO or individual. So it takes about 2-3 before it even gets to me for me to look at it and set out a panel that will hear the matter. So for Togo, I've not seen any case, but of course I heard about what is happening in the country in the news. And the Ecowas Court of Justice, for Togo, they should know, because there are so many. I think Togo is about the country that has the second highest number of cases before this, aside Nigeria. Of course, Nigeria is giant. So there are a lot of cases from brutalities, so many of them in the country. So I think now they know more about it. The Ecowas Court said that if they have matters that are not right for them, they will obviously bring them before the court to deal with it for them.
What is the goal for the Ecowas Court of Justice, at least? Let's look at the nearest future in the next 5 years.
In the next 5 years, the court, through our sensitization program, we think we have more to do by still making sure we educate the masses more about the nature of the court, how to approach the court. And so we do the sensitization every year. We go to 2 or 3 countries in a year. We meet indigenous people, social SCSOs, journalists, lawyers, allied market women, everybody, and let them know about the court, what the court is doing, their rights, what they can do and what they cannot do. So many of them. So that is one of the very important things that the court does to get the people to be able to come and vindicate their rights in the court. We also see a court that is able to have its judgments enforced. We are still dialoguing with the powers that be. It's a difficult one, though, but we are still dialoguing. We also see a court that will be expanded in terms of numbers of the judges, but we are only 5. And if you look at the volumes of cases before the court, it's quite worrying. And there used to be 7 judges, so they could set 2 panels, which is very good. And it's 5, so you can set up only 1 panel. So unfortunately, even the one, if one is traveled, the one is not well and all that, then the court cannot work for a period. So we see a court that is improved and expanded to be able with even more jurisdiction. Talking about the issue we're talking about, right, sometimes the court will be there. People will just be crying to the court, but no one comes to the court. I personally expected the impasse between the Ghanaian and Nigerian traders in Accra to come to the court. I expected the closure of the Nigerian border to traders from the Benin and other places, that so many articulators were there for so many months, to come to the Ecowas court, and no, not a single case came. So the court will be there expectant, but nothing happens, and the court cannot go and call the cases to come for them to determine the right. People think as matters happen, the court on its own can just decide and rule, which is not right. So these are some of the things we also tell them, sensitize people about, that the court cannot go and call the cases. It is up to you to bring them.
You will have to approach the court.
Exactly. So the matter happens. And so, honestly, because there's free movement and all these things are there. So if you're a member, and then free trade and free movement, there are laws, protocols that have been signed by the member states. So if somebody relocates and decides genuinely acquires the documentation, is working in the country, he's entitled to work in the Ecowas country. So as Ghanaians are here, there are Nigerians in Ghana. In the same way, people move around in the same way. So you have to open your border for people to come and trade in. There were coconut traders from all over who, because I know there are a lot of coconuts shipped into Nigeria. All of them got stuck and got destroyed. So the traders from here who are also sending things to other countries also, I mean, it doesn't work like that. But if you don't come, we'll just be sitting mute and be watching you. You know?
This is not about the court. My last question. There's an argument that the justice system in West Africa is under attack or is being compromised because it lacks that independence with which it operates or functions. What's your take on that?
Well, for the Ecowas court, I can say no. Because we are very forthright. It's an international court like any other court, very forthright, and we work assiduously and we speak our mind on issues. It's as simple as that. Because maybe because we don't belong, we don't owe allegiance to any particular state. But I cannot speak of that for the individual member states. They may be under their governments and therefore they will be towing their government's line, but that's a different ballgame.
But do you have an assessment?
For us or for them?
For them.
I do not go to those courts, so obviously I will not know what happens.
We have to say a sincere thank you to you for this opportunity. Any other last words?
My last word is that this is what should be happening. This dissemination of this kind of information is very good for the health and for even the human rights status of our community. If these are aired around people to know and hear that this is what is happening, it also helps us to do the sensitization that we embark on, spending money every year. So also thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Maybe this opens the door for partnership with the WEDR.
You never know.